Is the inverted pyramid possible in an organization? No, it is not that organizations or companies have become more esoteric or a new trend in management developed by a renowned Harvard academic in which he demonstrates that companies are adopting the principles of the discipline called New Age. It is an organizational structure in which the bosses are at the base of an inverted pyramid. Yes, as it sounds and is heard. The bosses below and the subordinates above. And the first serve the second. But before answering the question that serves as the title of this talk, I want to share, if you will allow me, a couple of personal anecdotes from my long life as a business consultant. The first took place in Costa Rica in 1996. At that time, I held the position of Change Management Senior Manager of a large international consulting company. A client had hired us to carry out a project in a discipline that was very fashionable at that time, and that was organizational reengineering. The professors, again from Harvard, Hammer, and Champy, had written a book of that name, Reengineering in Organizations, which had been a real bestseller and which sparked an inexhaustible source of work for expert consultants on the subject, among them which, fortunately, I found myself as a professional in the company I worked for as a company. Furthermore, also at that time, I had the opportunity to meet Hammer in a reengineering course in which we saw the new type of organization chart, organizational structure, as they call it in Spain, that was necessary in any process that had previously gone through a reengineering project. These were organization charts based on processes and not functions, led, be very careful with using the word directed, by process owners, and, of course, they were not drawn in the traditional pyramidal way. Reengineering, like quality or quality circles or many other management concepts had been before, was not just a new way of working. It was, and this was its least understood aspect despite being the most important, a new mentality of organization and management. It was a supreme and radical change of culture. Over time, reality prevailed over process reengineering, and today no one wants to talk about it anymore, and it is, in most cases, identified with a simple personnel reduction program. Any modern manager would reasonably ask why hire a consultant and carry out an expensive and lengthy reengineering project if staff reductions are done very well by fiat. I'm being sarcastic. But returning to Costa Rica, the anecdote has to do with the person from the client company with whom I had to deal to carry out the project and who held the title of reengineering manager. This cultured and strongly intellectual woman, the first day we were introduced, innocently asked me, "Francisco, have you already seen an organization chart based on processes operating in a company?" As I interpreted that a consultant must always be sincere with his client, not just sometimes, loaded with honesty, I answered in the following way, "No, never." And without allowing me to continue with my answer, he let out a huge shout in the sky saying how was it possible that the consulting company put someone in charge who had never before seen what we were trying to implement there. Fortunately, I was able to answer him with greater detail and precision about what I intended to tell him. Look, of course I have tried to implement process organization charts and even the so-called inverted pyramid, but you asked me if I had seen them work, and my experience is that despite making 100% successful implementations, over time, and not by much, the functioning of the organization ends up being the same as before it started, but now with greater conflicts and confusion. And the reason, I told him, is that as soon as something goes wrong, the company will inevitably look for someone responsible and, after finding him, will try to correct him, fire him, or relocate him, and will appoint someone responsible for ensuring that things are done as they should be done. We just return to the traditional chief. It doesn't matter what the paper says about how you are organized, what matters is how you function. The second anecdote is much more recent. It was with the managers of a regional unit of a multinational company, developing an entire system for calculating personnel needs based on the volume of work. Perhaps, if I had done it alone in my office, it would have taken a third of the time to do it and a few more years to implement it. My knowledge and experience in the field of organizational psychology have taught me that if you want things to be implemented, you must develop them together with the users, even if this initially represents a greater investment in time. In addition to this resource calculation program, everything was being processed based on an organizational culture based on the inverted pyramid. At least that was the message coming from senior management. And this is where the problems of interpretation and conceptualization come in, because many managers can talk about the benefits of the inverted pyramid without having the slightest idea of what this represents. It is as if they thought that by talking about now you are the bosses, the beasts of employees would calm down as if they were hearing heavenly music and that would be enough. It never is. The fact is that near the end of the project, a project review meeting took place by senior management, the bottom of the pyramid. Well, in that meeting, those at the top of the pyramid, that is, the middle managers, together with the consultant, presented the progress achieved up to that point. In order not to make the story longer than it should be, we will say that in the end, all the work developed together and of which we were convinced of its effectiveness and applicability, was severely questioned by a person who, without further detail and based solely in his position as leader, he considered that what was achieved was poor, little, and insufficient. It doesn't take a genius to realize that this man was not an inspiring leader, but a scary boss. The funniest thing about it is that while he was demonstrating how intelligent he was and how much his presence was needed in the company to free it from the mediocrity of its middle managers, he still dared to mention the inverted pyramid, to which he had just put a severe retrogression to its original position. That night, both the senior management character and the middle managers went to have a few drinks. I understand that in these tasks the top manager showed his most human side. That is why I insist that alcohol is not as bad as it is portrayed, and that, in its proper proportion, it works true miracles. And now, returning to the initial question, do inverted pyramids work or can they work? Well, the answer is a categorical yes, and only the following aspects are needed. 1. Understanding that an inverted pyramid does not necessarily mean a change in hierarchy. The entire society functions as a hierarchical pyramid since Greek times, through Roman times, and, surely, from much further back. Even today, the person we democratically elect to work for the citizens of any country is openly and directly called the highest leader. The traditional pyramid is as deep in our unconscious as the Egyptian pyramid was in the minds of its pharaohs if they wanted to get to the other side of the river. Let's accept it. In life, at the moment, there are bosses and nothing happens. Let's strive to create good bosses and not just change their names. The inverted pyramid is not about modifying hierarchies, but about work procedures and training. Furthermore, in an inverted pyramid in any organization, managers are required, who with a superior vision of the process can and must dedicate time and personal resources to aspects that are impossible to do by those who do things directly. Among these activities is coaching, process improvements, generation of teamwork, etc. 2. The inverted pyramids are based on a concept known as empowerment, whose translation into Spanish seems horrible to me, so I prefer not to use it. And this in turn is based on training and trust. Organizations that want to work under the premise of the inverted pyramid have democratized both knowledge and decision-making power. If the boss is the one who knows the most about a certain process, then he should be doing that process directly and nothing else. 3. The inverted pyramid is not an end, it is a means. As long as organizations continue to perceive it as an objective, we will continue to encounter resistance. Only when the inverted pyramid is perceived as a necessary means to reach an end, challenging and valuable objectives, will people voluntarily and decisively want to use it. If I am already achieving the objectives established by the organization by working in a traditional pyramid, rest assured that this way of working will be reinforced over and over again and will be impossible to change. But it would also be completely unnecessary. 4. Just as in modern methods of education, it is the student who wants to learn and not the teacher who wants to teach. In modern organizations, it is the person directly involved in carrying out the process who wants the problems to be solved. If the person who detects and solves problems is the boss, we are back to the traditional and hierarchical pyramid. If I, for example, work directly on a process and encounter a process problem that does not allow me to perform with due effectiveness and efficiency, I will surely not have the time to solve said problem and, perhaps, not even the knowledge. That's what my boss is for, to solve the problem that prevents me from being productive. I detect it, and in an elegant use of the inverted pyramid, I kindly ask my boss, if necessary I order him, to solve the problem for me. Go! This is the inverted pyramid in action. 5. It is likely that the application of the inverted pyramid culture is in direct conflict with the labor relations that prevail today. Fixed contracts and salary differences are in contrast to the inverted pyramid. Since these two aspects are extremely difficult to modify, I present them only as future achievements. It is noteworthy, however, that notable economists predict a future of less permanent employment and more independent employees with higher incomes. It is likely that, in the near future, we will be willing to sacrifice security for higher income and continued training. Even so, human relations will continue to adequately regulate professional relationships. For example, in a freelance market, an employer will still prefer someone known and trusted over, perhaps, someone more academically prepared. And there will be other aspects of our lives in which the pyramid remains stubbornly traditional, and we will have to accept it, and that's it. For example, in marriage. In my particular case, I have the power to use what is known as the last word. All of our discussions end with me saying a sympathetic, "Yes, my love, I do now." And if it works, why change it? At least, that's what my wife says.